Welcome to the Walsh College Creator Lab. My name is Jay Kruger, and today I am joined with some people that are incredibly fascinating. They come from different worlds, and we're going to talk today about bringing their worlds together. So when we talk about Walsh College, one of the biggest things that comes up is the intersection of technology and business. And so what I brought in is two people that come from their individual areas, and we're going to talk about what that intersection looks like, how we can dive into what makes one tick and what makes the other, and how they come together to make each other successful, and what we do to get our students ready to launch into their careers in one or the other, or both, as we're going to talk about. So today I have Alex Schwallbach, first try, crushed it, and Brian Pilarski. So we are going to dive in first. I would like to have you guys introduce yourselves, talk about a little bit about what you are doing, what industries you're working in, and then we will go into the intersection of the two. So Alex, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Alex Schwallbach, undergrad, postgrad from Walsh College.
Love it.
And been working for myself since 2008. We're a managed service provider in southeastern Michigan, and our primary focus is on, we're the outsourced IT department for small, medium-sized companies with the specialization in cybersecurity, and we're evolving to cyber resilience.
I love that. Cyber resilience is such a fun one. I can't wait to dive into that. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. Brian.
Jay, thanks for having me. Alex, thanks for joining today too. Brian Pilarski, graduate degree from Walsh 2007, undergrad from Central. I'm an insurance agent, broker, advisor, help people buy insurance to protect their businesses, help manage things that could happen, help advise them on prevention ideas. You know, the fancy term for that is risk management. Not as great as cyber resilience.
I don't know. It's up there.
But so I'll take risk management as my buzzword. We help consult and advise on ways to deal with risk and how to transfer someone to an insurance company and how to mitigate what you can't. So work with a variety of different industries throughout the local area, and then they take us to other parts of the country and internationally as well.
Okay.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said something in there that I think will catch a lot of people's attention. A lot of times when, especially this time of year going into the fall, people are thinking about insurance. They're not thinking about that businesses also have to carry insurance.
Yeah. So
talk to me a little bit about what does that look like? What type of insurance? What are companies buying insurance to protect themselves from?
Great question. So you're talking about people thinking right now, they're thinking about health insurance.
Right now they're thinking about health insurance.
Right. Like, I'm licensed in life and health, and I need help enrolling in my own benefits. It's confusing, and insurance is confusing. And I always kind of start off conversations with people about, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being an amazing infatuation and 0 being a very strong dislike. Where do you fall on the scale of insurance? And most people are at a 0 or a 1,
right,
or a 2, and some have a lot of negative experiences. But you bring up a good point. Businesses have to buy insurance just like individuals do. So individuals buy car and home insurance or renter's insurance. Businesses have to buy insurance for their operations. Things happen, people get hurt there, the products don't go well. They own or rent buildings, so they got to buy insurance for that. So, and then they have employees, so workers' compensation they have to buy. That's required by law. So there's a variety of insurances that businesses have to buy to protect themselves. Only a couple are required by law. Only 2 insurances are required by law.
Okay.
There used to be 3. That was struck down a few years ago. But workers' compensation is required. If you have employees, you're required federally to buy workers' compensation insurance. In return, the business can't be held liable for injuries. There's a few exceptions to that. And then auto insurance if you have an auto.
Okay. And
everything else is optional.
Okay. So so you say you work mostly locally, but it does take you around the country.
Yep.
What size companies are we talking about? Are we these mom and pop shops, or are we talking General Motors?
Great question. I'm open to working with General Motors if that's the case.
If they'd like to come on in,
Actually, the global risk manager is Laura Pilarski, no relation, the same last name, and her husband is named Brian Pilarski, but again, not me. So that.
But I'm sure it's not confusing when you introduce yourself at events.
So it's small to medium size. I would say my average client has, let's say, 70 employees and maybe 20 million in revenue.
Okay.
But there's a lot of things in between there. So as a firm, our Capnick is the firm I'm with. We have global companies.
Okay.
But again, we're mainly a small, medium-sized, middle market advisory agency, broker. That's where we play.
Okay. So when we think about that scale, and it could be the mom and pop shops, it could be some of these larger ones. One of the things that you and I have talked about in the past is risk mitigation. And we talked about, what does that look like? But what does that look like from the difference between the 5-person mom and pop shop to these large companies? Are they insuring against the same things, or are the concerns bigger the bigger you go?
Great question. Succinctly answering that's going to be harder, but I'll say this. It varies. Smaller organizations are stuck with limited resources.
Okay.
They're limited on what they can employ or deploy. They're limited on what they might buy. In general, businesses of different sizes buy similar insurance. Liability in case something goes wrong and they're responsible for it and they have to pay. It typically will cover their contents or building in some respect, and they have workers' comp. That's pretty general what they buy. Now, how they mitigate risk in between, this is such an exciting topic for everyone to talk about, but this is basic business things. So if you think about, do you lock your car?
Right.
When you leave it, do you lock your door?
Right.
Do you turn your alarm on? And do you still buy home insurance? But hey, I locked my door. So on the business side, there's various, some would think are common sense things that are preventative in nature or smart if something does go wrong. Redundancy, having backup, having operational process and procedures that you can duplicate. Right. So a lot of people do these different things that might be second nature. And the smaller the business is, sometimes it might not be because there's so much going on. They're trying to get revenue. They're trying to service clients. They're trying to grow. There's a lot happening. So process and maybe risk mitigation is not quite on the priority list. But as they grow and scale, it becomes a necessity.
For sure.
Because as law of large numbers, things will go wrong. Things will happen. And for a business to survive, they're going to have to adopt some of these things.
Yeah.
And last thing I'll mention is it really comes down to the leader. Like there could be 10 different heating and cooling companies of the exact same size. They all have 10 trucks. They all have 50 employees. They all do the same thing. And, one's very profitable, one's not. One has a lot of insurance issues, some don't. What's the difference between those 10?
Yeah.
It starts at the top. So it's the experience of the leader, the team around them, what's important to them. So individual people, leadership still matters. So the business skills, tying it back to Walsh here. I'm sitting here with Walsh. I'm looking at a Walsh backdrop. The business skills that you learn still matter greatly on how good the business performs and how hard or difficult or easy you make my job in security insurance for you as a business owner. Okay.
One of the things that comes into risk mitigation for a company is going to fall on the IT side of things. There's a lot of pieces where the entry point comes through computers and comes through the IT. Alex, can you talk to us a little bit about the risk mitigation side on the IT side? So, and that could be in a number of different ways. So you can take that question however you'd like to, because I think it's going to be the most relative to you. But this is oftentimes when we hear about something where a company is paying out tens of thousands of dollars on a ransomware or something like that. That is all coming in through different forms of IT. What on your side are you seeing that companies are or are not doing to mitigate some of that risk?
So one of the biggest things, at least for me, is knowing what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing that we're seeing, you have cybersecurity, you have processes and procedures, you have IT and layered security to prevent things from happening, but they still do. And one of the biggest things we're seeing right now is what I found out was cybercrime. We did not know that we needed cyber crime insurance in addition to cybersecurity, and what the differences between the two were. That is the biggest thing that I think small, medium-sized companies ownership doesn't understand, and we're trying to educate them on. But to Brian's point, you lock your car door. You have to do things to help yourself. Right. And then what happens when something that either the systems don't come through, or there's another one that will get executives and owners that are like, hey, I went to a web page. It asked me for my email address, my password, and my multi-factor authentication. And you're like, you didn't put that in, did you? And sometimes they're genuine. Yes, I did. Now what? I'm like, call your insurance agent. Like, are you covered for this? And this is something we didn't even know about.
Yeah, I think you're making a good point. To Jay's question is, IT brings a whole level of risk, and you still have humans, right? So I think the biggest source of some of these risk factors is the human behavior, which a lot of times is unintentional. Just a sophisticated scheme. So tying this in to your point, Alex, what we're seeing with IT and to what we're seeing in these scenarios that Alex is talking about is a very creative way to trick people. Right. Just stealing. It really is crime. So there has been an evolution about the way that these bad actors, we'll call them, they are able to induce people to giving them money or accidentally giving them money. And it might not just be they broke into your computer system.
Right.
I'm using that term crass. I mean, breach or whatever the technical term is. But they got in and they took the money. Yeah, that's obviously takes place in a security or technology environment.
Right.
But now they're doing it where they're saying, well, hey, we changed bank accounts, give us this money, and then the scenario, the individual just says, oh, no problem. Okay, here you go. And then they gave them the money. So then to Alex's point on, hey, what recourse do we have? There's we're out money. Do we have insurance to reimburse us? And if you have cyber and they came through the technology side, yeah. But if you just gave it away and you were just kind of tricked, it was stolen from you. Yeah. It really is like a new form of robbery.
Right.
And so the insurance has evolved, but it is a separate insurance now, or it's combo. I describe it to clients as you got to have a zipper. Right. I don't have a zipper jack, but I would zip it up now for like demonstration purposes. You need both to intersect on these various creative scenarios that are causing people to lose money.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. And Alex, there was a phrase that you used earlier when we were talking human firewall. And there's so many times where that human element, it doesn't matter what you put in place, you still have a human element. And at some level, people are still going to be trusting of others to a point where it gets dangerous.
Well, but how they're coming in, they're sending you an email, and you can even lob into AI into this. It has a company logo. They know that you're in a meeting because they breached your email, or you have given them access to your email, which is two different things. One is a breach, but if to Brian's point, you gave them access, they now know that you're in a meeting. They're replying to your controller or your CFO going, I need this wire to go out. Hey, we've got a problem with ABC client. They literally are watching your email and then deleting them while you're sitting in the meeting, and they're responding in your tone.
Right.
And what do you do? So what we were really taken aback by was we've got a number of clients that some disclosed that this, had happened, and others out of embarrassment and risk of their reputation didn't disclose it. But, $60,000 to a little mom and pop shop that they can't get back, that they voluntarily send or was misdirected banking information. This is one of the things we struggle with all the time. And small business owners, SMBs say, hey, what is the correct process and procedure? Well, you have a process and a procedure. Your AP person didn't follow it.
Right. Now
what happens? And I think that's where you come in.
Yeah, the human firewall. I mean, I think just get rid of all the humans. Right? There's some business owners that want to do that.
I'm sure.
I'm being facetious here. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's just it is a sore spot that even if they follow the procedures, they're getting very sophisticated. And so I think it's belt and suspenders. It's lock your door and set the alarm. Like it's two things you have to do. You got to employ a firm like Alex's firm to make sure that all the security posture is right. They'll help advise on the protocols and procedures you would want to go through that are best practices. But if it's just a creative way and things just went wrong unintentionally, it was just that good.
Right.
Having the right insurance in place, financial backstop, or it doesn't have to be an insurance policy. You have enough money in the bank to be able to financially withstand the loss.
Right.
And keep going. So that's resiliency was brought up about cyber, but it's just about business being able to continue or not. is really important. In insurance, this is just one way they do it. It can be cash reserves as another.
So talk to me about how this might go in the future. Is there a world where, and maybe this is already happening, where insurance and IT come together and go, look, these are the things we're seeing because on the insurance side, you're going to see all of it because you're going to see all these companies coming in. These are all the things we've done. Can you go to the IT world and go, hey, here's the things we're seeing. Here's the things we need help correcting again so that we don't have these issues anymore?
We're doing that today. So part of getting insurance, you can't just check the box the way you could in the past. Now there's a questionnaire, and you have to be able to not only just check the boxes, but then in the event something happens, you have to prove that you are doing A, B, C, D, E. Otherwise, they're not going to pay the claim. Okay. But it's that conversation of understanding the risk and how do I protect myself from it. You mentioned a company being able to have the financial fortitude to be able to cover the eventual
fortitude. That's good.
Look at me, big words. But to be able to withstand that loss. But the small little company that I'm thinking of, they're like 15 employees, and to them, $60,000, that's pure profit. And if you're not generating that profit, now you're digging in your pocket. To your point,
yeah.
It could wipe you out.
Yeah. So that's one aspect of it. That's into your. Are they converging? Yeah. The cyber insurance world is really adopting and turning into a tech-based posture. So a lot of the cyber insurance companies today, they are only 3 or 4 years old. Some are a year or two old, and they claim and pride themselves on being a tech company that happened to be in the insurance business. And they're all engineers, and they're doing all as much of the scans as possible. They're proactively looking for the threats. They're on the dark web. They're doing all these things. And so yesterday, if a client has a cyber insurance policy, and this insurance company is one of them that prides themselves being an engineering tech firm that happens to be offering insurance products for money, they send a note, say there's a critical risk factor that you need to fix immediately, and send a note to the client, send a note to us. We called the client, they got their folks involved, and they fixed it. So there is a intersection, to your point, of preventative and using technology to get ahead of these things that are happening because it is so pervasive. And to Alex's point, to bring this full circle, you do have to, insurance companies are relying on, and you are warranting, it's a big word, you are legally warranting that you are doing these things. So there is a catch, I got you moment too, because the insurance company wants the better risk. They will pay for the accidental, unseen or unknown, unforeseen. But if you're saying that you're doing certain things, you're locking your door, you're setting your alarm, and you don't,
right?
There's a point right now where they're saying we relied on that, and because you misrepresented,
right,
which is a big word, or weren't truthful, or whatever it may be. Now, there's something that's a little catchy on that. This is bringing Alex back in. Multi-factor authentication. You use the word MFA. That's the short term for it. On those applications that their insurance companies are relying on, it's conditional, whether they'll pay or not, it's conditional. They'll say, do you have MFA on your system?
In your system, yeah.
Okay. And they might have it on their email, but they don't have it on their cloud server. They might not have it on their backup. Or the IT administrator might not have to have MFA. And so we're seeing scenarios, I might be screwing that up, so please correct me, but we're seeing scenarios where we're in that intersection. Well, you said you had MFA, but something happened. You do here, but you don't there. Some are paying, some are not, some are having to fight. So that's kind of an interesting little twist to that story. So,
well, if you have MFA, it has to be on all the accounts. And to your point,
right.
well, we have it. Well, it's on email only, but you've got, call it Plex on the manufacturing side, or you've got EMS, electronic medical record system, dealership management system. You have to have the MFA, and it has to be enabled for everyone. You can't, hey, I'm sorry, I went to T-Mobile and I got a new cell phone. I turn it off. No, we're not turning it off. And you get a lot of pushback, more so from executives than end users, because it's process and procedures. Well, I'm the CFO. Turn it off. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I can't.
So I want to hit on something that you just mentioned briefly, but I think is a really important thing. On a very recent news, there was much bigger news about multiple companies being shut down by a single system essentially coming through. You and I talked briefly about the medical records piece of this. You had a client that literally saw life and death situations because of inability to access medical records. Tell us a little bit about that story.
This is actually just a doctor and a nurse that I ran into, and they could not access a patient's medical records to understand what prescriptions that they were on. And there were people that died. Mm-hmm. And this is much bigger than us because we play in the 25 to 99 market. We don't do hospitals and things like that. Mm-hmm. But what happens if you can't get to the medical records? On our side, production is down. So you've got the big thing that we're seeing is suppliers to call it General Motors. What if you get breached and now we're in just-in-time inventory and we can't provide the parts? There's no... Used to be, do you have cybersecurity? Do you do backups? How often do you do backups? Do you have MFA? Yes. Okay, great. Now they're coming in and saying, show us a report from your IT department that you're doing these things. Because on the medical side, you have Beaumont and McLaren and a number of other companies that have been breached, and then they can't see patients. I think McLaren was busing cancer patients to other locations. So I can't fathom the insurance ramifications and lawsuits of that. But what we want to do is have the conversation beforehand. Mm-hmm. Same thing on the insurance side. Don't wait for the event to happen. Talk to your insurance agent. Find out.
But it's a 0. It's a 0 out of 10. They don't want to talk about it.
Well, and the other side is most insurance agents don't know about it. They don't know. And this is the consulting aspect of what you do. And him and I just had a random conversation a couple weeks ago. I didn't know about cybercrime insurance. I didn't why carriers pay, why they don't pay, what needs to be done. Have the conversations before the event, not after, because so many companies think they're okay and they're really not. Have somebody come out and do an assessment, do a third-party audit, mm-hmm. Talk to your insurance agent and have them bring in the resources before.
Right. On similar vein, in that same rollout of having issues across the board, we saw flight after flight getting delayed for forever, seemingly it was at least for a week. What was it that caused that? Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then we'll talk about a little bit of the fallout.
To the best of my knowledge, it was some code that was released without being tested and not going through the proper processes and procedures. But that was only one facet of it. Now you have millions of computers that don't work. And how do we recover? Mm-hmm. And that's that cyber resilience. It's when the event, and this wasn't even cyber related, it was just bad code that got accidentally released. But we are so dependent on technology to function that if my iPhone doesn't work, I don't even know what your phone number is. Yeah. And I can't function. I
know your phone number.
And there's no paper records.
Right.
I haven't printed out my contact list in 20 years.
Yeah. Now, Brian, what's the fallout side of this?
It comes down to money, right? We're talking about business. So, what is business? You're performing a service for a fee, right? Or you're selling a product for a fee, and that's what it's about. So it always comes back to money, and the fallout is who's going to pay, who's responsible. Right? That's the fancy term for that's liability. Mm-hmm. Right? That just means responsible. And if you're the mom and pop or you're the organization that's suffering because of this event, you have losses, financial losses, and you want to continue. You have people that work for you. You have customers to serve. So insurance is one way to be made whole again. And like Alex said, it's you got to be preventative and proactive on it. But you also have to have the procedures when things happen. So insurance will give the money. But a good example, like we're talking about cyber and the doom and gloom and all these events, right? But let's just talk about an event. If a hack happens and Alex's iPhone is inoperable and he can't call me, what's the protocol? if you come home and your house is on fire, what do?
Right.
You're not going to call your insurance agent, right? You're not. I mean, you're going to do other things. So one of the more important parts about resiliency, response, risk management, we're talking about being preventative, is what is your incident response? If you're under a cyber attack, what are the steps you're going to take? And so I often find, to answer your question, long-winded here, is we are somewhere along the chain, but it's usually later.
Okay.
They usually call later, and we'll help fund some of the things that they had to do. We're recording this, and last night there was some storms that happened in the area, some pretty severe weather, and I got a call from somebody where a tree fell on their house. The roof's caved in. They can't get in the front door. They said, do we have to call our insurance first? Or can we have somebody cut this tree up so, like,
Right.
Absolutely. You take care of that first, and then we come in and pay for it. So cyber events and issues, there's got to be a protocol, and people need to know what to do, and you're going to need a paper format for it because it's going to happen
I was just
on
going to say.
Christmas Eve.
Yes.
It's going to happen on Thanksgiving. It's going to happen on 4th of July, and you're going to need to be able to communicate with people that's not through technology.
So very large suppliers on the automotive side and a number of other industries require an incident response plan. And if A, B, and C happens, this is who I call. I've got to call my insurance agent, fire department. So you already have police and fire listed and EMS on all the doorways and entranceways, but where's the other plans? And to your point, it's got to be on paper. When my systems break down, when the power's out, who do I call? Mm-hmm. I mean, we probably laugh at our parents, but they had the plumber listed, the electric, they had all these people listed.
On the refrigerator.
The doctor.
The note.
Take that same information, put it in your IT closet, and give it to key executives, people's cell phone numbers. Who do I call? I don't even know my insurance agent's phone number. I don't know who to call. What's the policy number?
Right.
I have no idea.
Right. So but that goes back to your risk mitigation base. You have to have your backup plan to your backup plan. You have to have all those things in place.
And people do this to some level. It's somewhat common sense, mm-hmm. right? You can say common sense isn't that common or whatever, but there's just some basics that I think are natural. But I think there's got to be a little bit more intention to it, where, like, analogy is, it's back to school season 2 as we're recording this, so all the students are going to go through the tornado drills.
Yeah.
You're going to go through the fire drills. Every time you get on a plane, they make you sit through the security safety protocols. You kind of have to have a formality to it. Mm-hmm. And to Alex's point, a good, resilient organization will have this formalized, right? So it's not going to be by accident. They do really well. If they do well from an event, they were prepared.
Right. Well, and it's always, everything seems super common sense until you're in a moment of chaos. And if it's not instant in your brain, Mike Tyson had a great line of, like, everybody comes in with a game plan until you get punched in the face. And so it's very similar. If I have a plan, that's all great. But when things go out the window and I didn't put other steps in place to have that plan take action, you're out. Yeah. You're out of luck. One of the things that I want to kind of circle back to from the beginning is we talked about some of the human firewall pieces of this. Now, in a world where since 2020, people are working remote all over the country, how much extra does a company have to pay attention to the IT space in the cybersecurity space when things are no longer only happening within their walls?
So we have rules. First off, we see a lot of business owners that don't want to give out company laptops, company resources for people who work at home. Just jump on your personal PC. You can't do things like that on one side. On the other side, we give you a work laptop. You took it home. All of a sudden, you get an infection, and you set off all the sensors. We get notifications. Hey, it was the 6-year-old or the 7-year-old that was using the laptop and playing with, call it Nickelodeon, or I don't know what the websites are these days, but and then accidentally clicked on something. Mom or dad doesn't even know. Right. And there's got to be rules around that, and they need to be enforced. But then the other side is they already clicked on it.
Right.
The device is breached. And so it is incredibly complex. And there's, to your point, business, I don't want to pay for all these devices. I don't want to pay for everybody to have a cell phone, but I need multi-factor authentication to get into the dealership management system, the electronic medical record system. Like where does that intersection of devices, IT, and risk mitigation come in?
Right. So when we talk about now, we talk about money, all this stuff always comes back to money, right? But so what's the diminishing return on, okay, I'm going to buy everybody a computer and a phone so that I know that I'm controlling it as the company owner, but is the financial aspect of that beneficial enough to cover that in a working space? Is there enough security in that to say like I can justify this cost?
You got. I'm gonna jump. You got a subjective answer and an objective answer.
Okay.
I think if it prevents one breach, the problem is prevention.
Right.
If nothing ever goes wrong, you're going to have the argument of commodity and cost. But if something does go wrong where you didn't, you're going to wish you would have. So it's just one of these things. Like it's
an insurance policy from the beginning, right?
Yeah,
insurance is great. You pay into it and you hope that you never have to use it.
Some use it all the time.
Well, some use it all the time.
No, you could not have said that better. It's after the fact, we make great decisions. Before the fact, it's, well, you know what? It's working right now, and it's been working for 5 years, and we're going to leave things the way they are. You're like, okay.
Yeah. So on that note, let's say it has been working for 5 years, but you're the IT person who has, the way that I have this set up right now, it's been working for 5 years. But the technology of today isn't the technology of 5 years ago.
That is something scary that we see in the industry. We see business owners depending on certain people, especially in small, medium-sized companies. It doesn't matter the size. The person doing the IT may be the owner's kid in high school, the owner's brother, sister. We see this all the time. The biggest thing that you can do is do an assessment. And even if you have your own internal staff, do an assessment and let somebody else, a third party, come in and look at your systems. I think we do it internally. We do it for our clients of, are we really doing this? Go through the checklist, go through the audits. It's part of the quality control system in automotive, but that's a really important part is I need to know what I don't know. And then you can layer that all together.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine, Brian, this is where you would step in as the insurance broker of that and say, look, you've got to keep these updates. You got to be doing this on a regular basis, or you're not doing your part. We talked about the fact that if they're not doing all the things they need to do, it's one thing to lock your door. It's another thing to lock your door and have security and have all these things. But if somebody's not going through the proper channels to update all of their security systems, then they're essentially putting a little tiny, bathroom door lock on their house.
Yeah. I mean, there's the cheesiest line of possible. It's a hospital gown, right?
Yeah.
You're covering the front, but the back's open. Right. So you got to do certain things that are just, you got to bite the bullet financially at times. And the insurance is the backstop. It's after the fact. And prevention is always the best medicine in these scenarios. And sometimes it's carrot and stick, right? You just hope. The problem is the carrot, you just never actually get to grab it.
Right.
And that's the problem with some of these things. It's kind of a never-ending endeavor of just hope nothing happens, and you just don't really get satisfaction when nothing happens.
For sure.
But that's really best practice.
Yeah.
My business plan is not based on hope. So
mine is.
Yeah, that's not how we teach it here at Walsh. It's not. We don't. Business plans
I
aren't.
don't know how this is going to go. Hopefully, it goes well.
Business plans aren't built on hopes and dreams.
But that's the plan. I think a lot of business owners just assume and hope, and nothing's happened, so nothing will happen, and I'm not going to change. That's one of the things. And we're seeing it even on the insurance renewals. When they come up, all of a sudden, for the first time, IT is asked, do we have these things in place? And it's no longer just a line item. Now it's a questionnaire. Oh, and by the way, after that, we're going to do a third-party audit depending on the level of coverage. And it's very different. It's evolving. And some companies are being forced to do it. They're like, oh, we have that. Just check the box. Hang on. Finance is checking the box. They haven't even asked IT. And that's the problem. And then when an event occurs, insurance is like, no, we're not. Yeah. You didn't do ABC. You said you were doing it. You're doing it. You've got multi-factor on half the devices. you don't have it on these other systems. So
that's why insurance gets a 0 score on the fun factor.
yes.
Yeah, I think it's a -1 on
until something goes bad and you guys step in to save the day.
Yeah, even
if you guys respectively, so we'll kind of, I want to wrap this up now because I want to be respectful of your time. I want each of you to think about if you had an opportunity to sit down with a company and you were to look them right in the eye and go, here's the thing that you need to be doing today that's going to make you better 3 years from now. What is that thing that you would tell your company in your respective industries?
I would say look at your cybersecurity, look at your cyber resilience plan. What happens when you get breached? How do we recover? The disaster recovery plan, incident response plan. Put those together and review them. Don't just do it today, because 6 months from now it's going to be different. Understand what your coverage is on the cybersecurity side, on the cybercrime. And I didn't know that I had the exposure. I have clients that didn't know that they had the exposure. Have the conversations ahead of time. Everybody makes fun of me. I always talk about the heart attack. The last thing you want to do is have a heart attack. I can't prevent the event. I cannot prevent the event from occurring. But if you have high blood pressure and you're overweight and you've got high cholesterol, there are things that I can do to mitigate the event. Exercise instead of, all of a sudden now you're in the hospital and you're dead, as opposed to the event will not be as impactful to my life and my business if I take these preventative steps.
So get ahead of it. Be prepared.
We do it every day. You go see the doctor. And this is a great example. How many people go see the doctor every 6 months or every year? And how many people haven't seen the doctor in 3 years?
Yeah.
Have you?
I've seen the doctor in the last year.
Have you?
Yeah, regularly.
Okay. So we're the anomaly.
Yeah.
You have the outliers that are like, hey,
I'm
going to roll the dice. And you know what? Everything's been fine. And then you land in the hospital.
Yeah.
So
yours would be get ahead of it, make a plan, revise the plan regularly, make sure you're revisiting it, know what's going to happen, disaster relief, all the mitigation that you can possibly do.
Absolutely.
And making sure that what you do today is not going to necessarily be the same thing that is 6 months from now.
Everything's changing.
It can't be.
So IT gets a 0 or 1 on the 10 scale too.
we do.
I think we're in the same boat.
We don't generate revenue. We just generate expense.
I think I just put an observational bow on that. I think IT brings two things. I think it's kind of like having a car, right? You got the freedom and access. I mean, you can get remote work from people. You can communicate better with customers and employees and vendors and suppliers. I mean, there's so much good that comes from it. But in addition to that, there's danger, right? There's risk that comes with driving just as much as there's the benefits. So, I
haven't driven with you yet.
Apparently, there's a lot of risk involved.
I'm pretty
This
safe.
could be kind of fun.
I'm pretty safe. That makes pretty good.
All right. So, Brian, same question to you. If you had a minute to sit down with a company, what would be the thing that you would tell that CEO or president that will make them better 3 years from now than they are today?
That's a great question, and I'm going to dodge that question answer to it because it's hard. My lens is, obviously I'm on the insurance and risk side, so that's kind of where my mind goes to in answering that question. But insurance, in my opinion, and in my role with the business, it's just really the oil that grease the engine. It's really backstop. It's just allow commerce to happen. A lot of people want to make sure there's insurance there, so there's a financial recourse in case something goes wrong. Because if not, then they got to pursue legal action to try to get paid, and they don't know if the company's got it. It just creates this lubrication of business, in my opinion. So I really want insurance to be Goldilocks level, like not too much,
right?
Not too little, just the right amount. And then, to answer your question, there's other things that we can help prevent. It's really risk management so that you can go pursue your goals. What do you want to pursue in the next 5 years? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you need to do it? And then what are the risks that could be in the way? And then how do you mitigate them? And then when things do happen, I think the most important thing for businesses, in particular, they worry about their insurance costs. Right. We all worry about price. It's 99% of the attention a lot of times when you're renewing when nothing's going wrong, and then 100% of the attention is this covered or not when something goes wrong, right? But on the preemptive side is, so to answer your question specifically on insurance is when things go wrong, that you respond to them on time and are engaged in the outcome and think about the best solution. So where we see people where the insurance kind of gets off the rails price-wise or options or just, the fun scale goes to negative land, it is when they just don't have a lot of interest or care into how things might impact the future. So if you're mindful of how to deal with financial things that come up and how to turn claims in and how to deal with them, your costs over time will be manageable. But people that treat insurance in a different manner, maybe with entitlement or don't care, or like, I just hate it, I don't want to deal, they just really kind of head in the sand, like you were talking about earlier, I don't want to deal with this. I think sometimes down the road, there's a have and have not issue. The ones that have done it well will have good options, and the ones that haven't will not have great options, and it could be very difficult for businesses.
I knew we'd get you to an answer. You were going to try and dodge it, but you gave one.
It's the most long-winded answer
It's all right.
give.
But I think you're right, though, and I think it's a great thing for companies to understand. Be laser focused on what your long-term goals are, and do the things that can prevent the biggest issues from happening now to make sure you reach those goals from 5 years from now.
Right.
I think it's perfect.
And people like Alex and I are just here to kind of support that.
Yeah.
And we'll scare you enough and try to get you to motivate you to do the right things, but we're really just supposed to be additive, not preventative. And that's really my advice, really how I would sum it up.
Yeah, I think it's great. Well, guys, thank you so much. This was really fun. And I would love to have you guys back and we can dive into all kinds of topics. You guys are incredibly knowledgeable. So thank you guys so much for sharing your time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.